Hey, what's going on, guys? Well, I am back with part 2 of our 2020 RV travels. If you missed our last video, I went over how we totaled our trailer, overcame it, and got back on the road in 6 weeks. So I will link that somewhere around here. So as you can tell, we are not in our RV, and that is because we are in Turkey. That's right, we are in Bodrum, Turkey. We've been here for 2 weeks. But if you'd like to know more about our current adventures and travels, I would check out our Instagram page, which I'll link down below. But I will definitely be making more Turkey-related content and giving updates of exactly what our future travel plans are. Okay, so stay tuned. Time for your walk. Time for Fritz's walk. Let's go outside and I'll tell you more about our 2020 travels. Let's go. Let's go, go, go. If this is your first time here, my name is Dan and my wife's name is Barbara, and we are wandering while we can. We are full-time travelers and had been traveling around the U.S. in our RV for the past 2.5 years. But now we're abroad, but we will be sharing those stories and updates soon. But we just share our life living a nomadic lifestyle, so if that is something that you're interested in, please consider subscribing, and I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and leave a comment, because I would love to hear from you. So with that said, let's get into the rest of the story. Okay, continuing where we left off, between February and July of 2020, we traveled to California, Nevada, Northern Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. And in that period of time, we had to get used to towing a significantly heavier trailer. The pandemic hit, and something happened to us that was by far the hardest thing that we've ever had to deal with. We were really excited to get back on the road, but as you can probably imagine, we were also incredibly nervous. We had just crashed our last trailer and wanted to avoid that at all costs. So I started doing a lot of research and I found a new hitch called the Hensley hitch, which guaranteed to eliminate trailer sway. So this was not an easy decision because the hitch is probably about 3 times more expensive than other hitches, but we just wanted the peace of mind of knowing that we didn't have to worry about trailer sway, or it would really be reduced, that risk would be reduced while we were continuing our travels around the US. Keep Your Daydream did a really good video on the Hensley hitch, so I'll link that down below just in case you're interested. Hey guys, jumping in here really quick because I'm editing the video right now and I'm realizing that this is a long one, and also there may be some topics that you're not interested in. So I'm going to be adding some timestamps down below so you can feel free to skip forward or to jump to different parts of the video if you're not interested in what I'm talking about. Okay, back to the video. Now there is one huge misconception that I had with the Hensley hitch, which I did not find in any of my research on YouTube or online. And that is that even though it eliminates trailer sway, you will still feel movement in the rig as you're towing. I actually found videos on YouTube in which people would say that they didn't even realize that they were towing a trailer, that it was so smooth and there was no movement that they didn't even realize they were towing anything. I did not have that experience. Now, I can understand that maybe these people have larger trucks or some other scenario that or variable that did not affect me, but for me, I absolutely felt movement as we were towing. The simple fact was even if you're towing a fifth wheel, wind is going to be exerted on the side of your rig as you're towing. And so you will feel some slight movement. It's just that with the Hensley hitch, the whole rig moves together. And that took me quite some time to fully understand, because I thought that I hadn't installed something correctly, or there was some faulty part of the Hensley hitch that was causing this, but that was not the case. It was just simply that the rig was going to move, it just was moving as one instead of the possibility of the trailer moving independently of the truck, which causes that trailer sway situation and you can lose control. Installing the Hensley hitch wasn't difficult. The issue was that Afterwards, when the truck was connected to the trailer, I noticed quite a bit of squat, which is the back of the truck was weighed down with the front of the truck kind of sticking up slightly. As you can see, the truck is sitting very low. This is a problem because when we're driving, if there's less weight on the front of the truck, it causes the steering to be less responsive. It's almost like you're floating on a cloud, which is obviously not what we want. Now the Hitch does have a weight distribution bar. With our Ram 1500, it has coil spring suspension. And with that type of suspension, it is great for a comfortable, cushy ride when you're driving without a trailer attached. But when you have something with significant weight hooked up to the back of it, it has a tendency to squat. Now keep in mind that we were within all of our weight capacities. Our towing capacity, our payload capacity, all of these numbers we were within very reasonable and safe limit. At the time, I thought that I needed to make an adjustment on the hitch to be able to level out the truck, but that wasn't right. And I wouldn't actually find out the exact solution for probably another month, but that solution was adding airbags into the coil spring suspension to help support that extra weight that was being added on by the trailer. I would say out of all the upgrades that we made on the truck and the trailer, that the airbags were by far the best because it made the towing experience so much better and it really leveled out and stabilized the truck while we were towing. But I will say that the experience of towing for the next month from when we left Picacho, Arizona to Joshua Tree to going to Nevada and even going into Arizona, it was not enjoyable.
Hey guys, Barbara here. I figured I should add my 2 cents on this whole scenario. So while Dan was doing all the research and making sure that we would have all the upgrades to make us feel safer, I was just dealing with my emotions, basically trying to get over that PTSD from the car crash. So since we had the crash in Junction, Texas, until we figured out how to fix everything, every drive was a stressful moment for me. So I would be sitting in the truck, my hands would be sweating so much, I had that feeling in my gut. I was like a cat. Every little bump, every little sway, I was like, And of course that adds a stress to Dan, and he was being so patient and so nice. He was just like, how are you feeling? It's okay, I'm going to go slower, and I'm figuring out how to make this better for both of us. I am also nervous, but I'm confident that we can do this and you're gonna get over it. So after a few months and all his adjustments and the changes that we did, I felt better. But let me tell you, those, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 months since the crash until we got like a perfect drive, it was hard.
Now, people can get crazy when it comes to towing about what you should have done or what you should do. And I just want to say, please be kind, because in this moment, we were doing our best with all of the research or everything that we could use, like information-wise, at our fingertips to fully educate ourselves so that we would tow safely. And like I said, we were within all of our towing capacities, all of our numbers. It was just finding the right set of upgrades or things that we needed to do for our truck and trailer to make it work for us. Outside of dealing with this issue, we had some really fun things to look forward to. First, we had an awesome time with our family in Joshua Tree, which was really, really needed because it helped distract us from all the other issues that we had just gotten done resolving, and we needed that break. And right after that, our best friend Nati flew in from Santiago, Chile to spend about a week with us. So we drove over to Los Angeles to pick her up from LAX. Of course, we had to check out Santa Monica and some of the surrounding areas. And then we headed back to the trailer, packed everything up, and drove to Lake Mead, Nevada. Growing up in Southern California, we were only about a 4 or 5 hour drive from Vegas. And in my 20s, of course, my friends and I would go out there and do the whole partying thing, but we never really went outside of the strip. So this time around with Barbara, Nathi, and I, we camped in Lake Mead, and we were only about 30 or 40 minutes away from the city, but we also discovered there's so much to do, like visiting the Fire Valley. Going to the Hoover Dam. Obviously, the stuff on the lake itself. And for as close to Vegas as it is, you really feel like you're out in wilderness. Now, it's a perfect time to go during the winter because I think during the summer, the heat is just too much. And because it was around the end of February, it was perfect temperatures. And I was so pleasantly surprised for what we found and all the different things that we could do while we were camped there. And the best part was that we were boondocking, so we didn't have to pay for our campsite. So we parked for 2 weeks, had all the conveniences of going into Vegas and all the fun activities of hiking and exploring the outdoors for free. I don't think Nathi's visit could have been timed better because for Barbara and I, we were both processing things differently, and I know that Barbara needed her best friend to help recover and recoup from what happened in January. And so we started to slowly get back into our routine and get used to living in a new space and not having to solve problems and fix things, and just enjoy our travels and enjoy getting back to work and life in general. After Nathi left, our next stop was Sedona, Arizona. And now I had been to Sedona before, but I couldn't wait to show Barbara because I knew how special of a place that it is. Since we were still trying to figure out our towing and hitch situation, we didn't feel comfortable taking a long drive. So we decided to stop in Seligman, Arizona before getting to Sedona to help break it up, which was perfect because this was Route 66. So we would be able to see some of the historic sites and kind of the cool little museums and things that they had along the route. Sedona was everything that I remembered and more. We scored an awesome boondocking spot, which was about 25-30 minutes from town, although it took forever to get back there because there were washboarded roads, but it was really worth it because the views that we had from our campsite were spectacular. You would just see the red rock, the traditional classic red rock Sedona mountains in the back with the rolling hills, and every morning I was waking up and I just couldn't believe that we were there. Another beautiful day in Bodrum. Oh, God. All right, much better. So if you guys aren't aware of this, I am an accountant and I work Monday through Friday full-time. I just do it remotely. So you'll have to excuse our content schedule because I just have to fit in the making of these videos whenever I have time. And obviously with us traveling on weekends and exploring things, it doesn't leave a ton of time to be able to make the YouTube videos, but I'm working on it, so I appreciate your patience. So we arrived in Sedona at the beginning of March, and I think this was around the time we started hearing about coronavirus. Ironically, Sedona was the first time we started making friends. We had a couple neighbors that were our age and we started chatting with. Barbara had met some people on Instagram that came over and we would have bonfires, and that's when the chatter started about COVID and possible lockdowns and the seriousness of the entire situation. Now, I'm pretty sure that our experience of navigating COVID and the pandemic was very different than most people. While we had our struggles, I felt that they were very minor in comparison to what most people were going through. The first big decision that we needed to make was whether or not we were going to continue traveling in the trailer, or if we were going to get an Airbnb or long-term rental to hunker down to kind of go with the general thought of quarantining and staying indoors. There was really a big question mark when it came to campsite availability and if these places were going to remain open, because RV parks, various state-run campgrounds, and possibly even boondocking sites were being shut down, or at least there were rumors of them being shut down. So we needed to figure out what our options were there to determine the best course of action. The unfortunate part was that there was just not a lot of information online, and there was a lot of conflicting stories and people saying one thing while another group of people are saying something completely different. So we really just kind of had to go with our gut feeling, and after talking about it, we felt that we could boondock while social distancing and staying in one spot for a longer period of time. I think this was a really confusing time for most full-time RVers that did not have a sticks and bricks home to go back to, because each state was kind of saying, hey, everyone hunker down in your own home, do not travel, do not go outside, and we did not have that option. We didn't have a home, we didn't have a rental or somewhere to go back to, and our family was on the other side of the country, so it wasn't a simple like, oh, let's just go stay with my parents, because that was like a 3-day drive to get to them. Now the next stop on our itinerary was the Grand Canyon, and we really didn't want to miss that because that was something that Barbara had never seen before. So first we went online to see what availability of boondocking spots there were, and surprisingly there was quite a bit available around the Grand Canyon. So we did decide to go there, but we were going to spend less time there, and then from that point we were going to be moving to Page, Arizona, where we would be spending at least 3 to 4 weeks hunkering down, so to speak, in the desert, social distancing, and just kind of waiting for the quarantines to lift and for things to kind of reopen, because that's what we thought at the time. We thought that, okay, this is only going to last for 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then things will go back to normal. Obviously, that was not the case. We arrived at the Grand Canyon right before they closed it. I think we got there on a Sunday and they closed it on a Wednesday. So after arriving, we went in, we kind of checked out the park. There was no one there. So that was the interesting thing, was that the park was completely empty and the whole town and the area around it was empty, which was ironic because their grocery stores were fully stocked. So they had toilet paper. I couldn't believe it. They had food, meat, water, everything, like all of the supplies. The grocery stores were intact. So we absolutely took advantage of that. I think the scariest part of COVID for us was the unavailability of supplies. It's not like we lived in a home in which we could go and hoard a bunch of stuff and have supplies to last for like a month. We had enough space in the trailer for probably around 2 weeks of groceries. So going into the store, we were limited to how much we could buy, and there wasn't much available. Whether we needed toilet paper or eggs, milk, meat, water, etc., that was scary because if it wasn't there, we didn't know where we were going to get it or when we would get it. And I mean, thankfully at the end of the day, we were able to get all the supplies that we needed, but it was stressful. I think combined with not knowing where we were going to stay, this was the stressful part for us when it came to navigating COVID. After the Grand Canyon, we went to Page, Arizona. And we felt this would be a really good spot because there was a lot of open land and places to camp where we could stay away from other people. And we were right, because we found a spot about 20 minutes away from the town of Page, but there was no one around us. And it was gorgeous because we were in the middle of this little valley, and there would be wandering herds of cows in the morning. There were little slot canyons around the trailer, so there's a lot of stuff to explore. We were near the Colorado River. We were right next to Horseshoe Bend. There was just a lot of outdoor activities to do and kind of help us distract us from what was going on. When we needed to go into Page, we would obviously mask up, social distance, just do the basics. Go to the grocery store, maybe go to the post office, and then come back. Once again, the places that we had the least expectations ended up being the places that we enjoyed the most and had the most memories from. And I feel like Page was one of those places. So this part is incredibly difficult to relive and tell. So I figured it would be a really good idea if Barbara and I both told the story together, because this was by far the hardest thing that both of us have ever had to deal with. The thing is that we consider ourselves a little family, which includes our dogs. We brought both Rumi and Fritz, our dogs, from Chile to the United States, and they have been traveling with us ever since. Before Barbara and I met, she was coming home late one night from a night out with her friends, and she went into the lobby and saw that there was a dog wandering around the elevators. And it was a very pretty dog. It looked like it had been taken care of and maybe was just lost or accidentally got let out of his apartment. So Barbara thought that she would let him sleep inside the apartment for the night until she could find the owner.
The next day, I started a search for the owner of that dog. So I talked to the concierge, I went to social media, posted on Facebook, I went to the vet to see if it was microchipped, and nothing. Like that day I didn't find anything, and the following days and weeks also nothing happened. And that was enough time for me to fall in love with that dog. And that dog was Rumi. And the name came from roommates. I was living that time with 2 roommates, and I asked them, can we keep this dog? And they say, yeah, so let's come up with a name. And I couldn't come up with anything better than Rumi, which is our 4th roommate at that apartment.
Another Rumi.
So I was pretty sure that Rumi came from somewhere because he craved attention all the time. And he was also very smart. He understood the words no in Spanish and come, which is eat, and he never peed or pooped inside of the house. So he was kind of trained.
Rumi absolutely always wanted to be touched. Even if he was near you, he would have one paw at least touching your leg or some part of your body. He just wanted to be around people. He was also a madman. When we would go out on the street, he would be running up and down, chasing cars, barking, getting in fights with other dogs, and just, he could absolutely be a handful, but his loyalty and love more than made up for it.
Rumi was also a survivor. After being with us for almost 5 months, one of my roommates accidentally lost him. We had the bad habit of not keeping him on the leash, and one day he just went around. He probably saw a squirrel or something, and he usually would come back, but that day he didn't. I received a call from my roommate and I was devastated. I rushed back home and I started looking for Rumi. I looked for him for almost a month, and I was lucky enough that someone in the neighborhood found him wandering around, and because he was such a madman that was always barking on my street, they remember where he came from. After a month of living on the streets again, we got Rumi back.
And Rumi was very skinny, dirty, and a little shell-shocked. When Barbara first got him, she told me that he was a little shy and timid, but after a couple days, he got used to being back home and being the loving dog that he was. So a few months later, I would move to Santiago because Barbara and I were doing a long-distance relationship and we got tired of that. So I moved and became little buddies with Rumi because I was working from home and we would spend all day together. A couple of years later, Fritz would join our family. I had been kind of interested in adopting a dog, and Barbara had seen Fritz's picture on a Facebook post, and so of course we went to go see him, and yeah, fell in love. So we brought him home with us. Now, as a puppy, Rumi became Fritz's like de facto father, and he learned all of the good and all of the bad. Fritz. Fritz. Rumi. Now, Fritz was abandoned in a box with his brothers and sisters in front of a school in Santiago, but was found immediately. So he never lived on the street like Rumi did. Next, we decided to move back to the US, where we lived in Florida for about 2 years before we started our travels in our RV. During our travels, and especially during the pandemic, we felt like even more of a tight-knit family. I loved watching the dogs explore all these different places in the US, knowing that they were Chilean street dogs and they had come so far from their home and now have become world travelers. After Page, we moved to Zion, where we once again scored a beautiful campsite. And even though everything was closed, we were able to enjoy the outdoors, breathtaking views, and a peaceful as well as quiet time together. From the end of April to the beginning of July, we traveled through Utah and Colorado. We visited amazing places like Zion, Bryce Canyon, Salt Lake, Moab, which has Canyonlands and Arches National Park, and we even made some new friends while we were in Salt Lake, which made exploring the outdoors with a group even more fun. Each place was more stunning than the last. For me, Utah became the highlight of the entire trip, and I had no idea of the state's natural diversity, going from deserts to mountains and forests to lush grasslands and even the wildlife. We saw moose, antelope, foxes, and more. I was born in Utah, although I moved to California when I was 5, so I never had a chance to discover my own state, which made our time there extra special. Now for Colorado, I had very high expectations with the Rockies and all of the pictures that I'd seen online. Our first stop was in Telluride, which I don't think that we could have had a more picturesque spot. We were at the base of these breathtaking mountains. We were surrounded by wildlife. There was a lake right down the road so that we could go paddleboarding. And Telluride was like something out of a movie, with its quaint town and insane views of the mountains. After taking a few days off, we were really able to enjoy our time there. After Telluride, our next stops were Colorado Springs and Granby, Colorado, right outside the Rocky Mountain National Park. Unfortunately, this is where we started to have problems. We underestimated the number of people that were going out and camping, and we also had thought that we could boondock, but we quickly realized that that was not possible because there was no cell service in the majority of the areas that we wanted to stay. It was just a stressful time because we had no clue where we were going to stay, if we would have cell service, which meant we couldn't work, and also on top of this, things started to break on the trailer. Despite this, and as you can see, we really did enjoy ourselves and take advantage of the time that we had. We even had our friend Lindsay come and join us, which was a lot of fun. So all of these problems were immediately compounded when I came back from a walk with the dogs and I saw that Rumi wasn't eating, which is strange but not completely uncommon because he did have a reputation of just eating random things while we were out. I told Barbara about it and we decided just to monitor it. She was cooking him rice and some chicken, so he was eating kind of a little bit, and we just figured that it was something that would probably pass in a couple of days. It did not. In fact, over that period of time, he just seemed to lose energy, was very lethargic, and so we ultimately decided to take him to the vet.
Now, since we live on the road, it's not just call the vet and say, hey, I'm taking Rumi for a review, or Rumi is not eating normally, can I just take him? I had to call around and find someone that I judged by the reviews and also that was available to see him with such short notice. I finally found someone that could take him the next day, and upon examination he said that Rumi was fine since he was not having diarrhea, not vomiting, not losing any fluids, he was just not eating, and the fact that he didn't have energy is probably because he was not eating. So he just prescribed a different food. He said that dogs normally can get tired of their food or just be like humans, like, I don't want to eat that today. So I was like, okay, I bought all the new prescribed food that he mentioned, and Rumi started eating again. And his energy came back and he started running around. I even went on a hike with him and he was Rumi again. He was just a madman running around, full of energy, and seemed fine. Unfortunately, this was short-lived and Rumi stopped eating the special food. And as a result of that, he started losing his energy again. So we would take him in walks. He would walk a little bit, stop a little bit, just lay down, stand up, walk very slow, and we could just tell that he was struggling.
After Rumi stopped eating a second time, I immediately called the vet, and it was in the morning and they were still open, but it was a Saturday. So I went ahead and I explained all the symptoms that Rumi was having. Based off of what I was telling him, he had told us that Rumi's symptoms were not life-threatening, that he was not losing fluids through diarrhea, vomiting, and that this was something that could wait until Monday. I was hesitant in accepting his response, but I'm not a vet. I am trusting this person to give me their expertise and their knowledge to make sure that my dog is okay. So we decided to wait until Monday. Rumi was able to eat a small amount of chicken and rice. We just made sure that he was comfortable. And at that time, our friend Lindsay was visiting from Atlanta, and we had planned to go hiking in the Rocky Mountain National Park. Rumi seemed to be fine, and we went into the park and spent the day. When we came back that afternoon, his condition had gotten worse. Specifically, his breathing. He had a rasp to his breathing that really scared me. We both looked at each other and we knew that he wasn't okay, that there was something wrong and we needed to take him to the vet immediately. The vet that I had spoken to earlier had an emergency line, and he said, if there's anything that comes up, just give us a call and I'll be here for you. So I called him, it went to voicemail. I called him several more times and it went straight to voicemail. I left messages. He never called us back, not even several days after this whole incident happened. Obviously, in this moment, I realized he left us high and dry. And we were stuck in a situation where we had to call any available vet to take Rumi to have an examination to determine what was going on and to, number one, make sure that he was stable and he was okay. After calling several vets in the Granby area, every single one of them was closed. And our only option was to drive into Denver, which was over 2 hours away. But because we had no other options, then we just had to do it. And thankfully, Lindsay was there so that she could watch Fritz while we took Rumi into Denver. The entire drive of us going to Denver, I felt that, okay, whatever it is, they're going to be able to fix Rumi.
I wasn't as certain that Rumi was gonna be okay, and I was sitting with him in the back and I could see how uncomfortable he was. He was standing up, having a hard time to breathe, and then he would get tired and he would lay down, but as soon as he lay down, he could barely breathe and his tongue started getting purple and he would just stand up again. Like, he knew what to do to feel better. He was trying. He would rest a little bit, stand up a little bit to be able to breathe. So I started getting really scared in the back of the car.
Now, because we were in the middle of COVID, they would not allow anyone to go inside of the vet. So when we arrived, we had to call them, and one of their technicians came out, took Rumi, and brought him inside. We had no idea how long it was going to take. And at that point we were starving, so Barbara went into a nearby restaurant to get some food for us quickly while we waited to hear back from the vet. As Barbara was coming out, I got a call from the vet, and she began to explain to me that Rumi's condition was extremely serious. She began to explain that Rumi had some sort of bacterial infection, and that infection was filling his lungs up with fluid, and that's why he couldn't breathe. She had put in a tap, some sort of tap, to basically relieve the pressure on his lungs, and they had sedated him. But essentially she said that Rumi had very little time left to live, and that we would have to essentially put him down. And Barbara was standing in front of me, and I'm listening to this, and she couldn't hear what the vet was saying. And for me, everything began to get fuzzy. My heart stopped, I couldn't think, and I couldn't really wrap my brain around what the vet was. This person, who we had no clue who this person was immediately telling me that we needed to put our dog down. And I got angry. I was angry because it's like, whoa. You're jumping immediately to putting our dog down. What about, there has to be some other option. There has to be some other surgery, procedure, whatever, I don't care. Tell us about the alternatives, not just immediately jump to where you need to put your dog down. And I had to hang up the phone and tell this to Barbara, which we were both in utter disbelief. I thought that he was going to be fine, and all of a sudden that got destroyed.
I cannot really remember what I was thinking that day or that time. I just remember that our hunger immediately disappeared. I had a bag of food but no desire to eat, and we just had to have a really difficult conversation. And I really remember one thought that I had this whole time while Dan was on the phone. It was just like, ask the vet, what would you do if it was your dog? For some reason I didn't ask that. I just didn't ask. So after talking, crying, being in silence, doing everything that we could do in that bench in front of the emergency hospital, we came to the decision that we didn't want Rumi to suffer more. We saw him the past 2 weeks eating, not eating, have energy, losing energy, and in the past couple of days having trouble breathing. We just figured that we would go with the recommendation of that vet. We were pretty concerned that we wouldn't be able to go inside and see Rumi again. So when Dan called back to tell them what we decided, he asked, but I really want to see my dog again. Is that possible? Even though it was during COVID time, they do have a special treatment for this type of situation. So they let us go in and see Rumi.
And we had about, 10 minutes with him before they came in with the shot. And he was slightly sedated, but when they carried him in, you're not prepared in that moment. You're not prepared to say goodbye. I was not prepared at all. And it's surreal. It's like you're having an out-of-body experience watching yourself in the room and wanting to stop it from happening and doing, there's no time to decide whether or not you are making the right decision, and yet you're there and things are just moving, things are just happening.
But something brought peace to my heart. That question that I didn't ask out loud was answered. The vet came in, talked to us, introduced herself, and one of the only things that I can remember she saying was, I know this is really hard, but I would have done the same to my pet. Which for me was incredible to hear. It was really sad, but incredible to hear, because I wanted to ask that. And for some reason I didn't ask over the phone because I thought, the vet's not gonna say it. And she brought that up without me asking. So that was something that, of course, I was feeling guilty because of the decision, but the vet gave me answers that I didn't even ask out loud. And that was really good to hear.
Rumi came in and he was awake and he was looking at us, but he looked scared. They had shaved the area in which they had punctured his lung to allow him to breathe easier, and Yeah, he just looked scared. And so they put him down on the table with us, and we just both held him. We both were on top of him, kissing him, petting him, and
Saying our goodbyes.
saying our goodbyes. I've never experienced anything like that before. The vet came over, and she asked us if we were ready. I never fully understood. I've seen other people who own dogs before and how destroyed and distraught they were when they lost their dog. I never understood it. And in this instance, not only were we losing our dog, our best friend, someone that gave us so much joy and love, and we were holding him as his heart stopped and as his body stopped breathing, and that was indescribable. And I don't think I've cried harder in my life. Thankfully, Barbara and we had each other, but it would take a long time for that pain to go away. We both agreed that Rumi had a very good life. He had 2 people that loved him, and even though he came from the streets of Santiago, he found someone that loved him more than anyone could. And he had traveled to so many states in the US. We had taken him around Chile. At the end of the day, we made the right decision because he didn't deserve to suffer. We miss Rumi every day. I always find myself thinking of him and the crazy things that he would do.
And it was hard to come back because we left with Rumi, we got back without Rumi, and Fritz knew it. He was at the door, it's like, hey guys, you forgot something, there's just 2 of you. 3 left this house before. We could see that he knew something. We don't know how much dogs understand, but he understood that he had a buddy that he wasn't there anymore.
So we had a few days left in Granby, although it felt so strange when we finally packed up and left because it felt like we were leaving something behind. To this day, we don't know exactly why or how Rumi got a bacterial infection, at what point along our travels that this developed. But we were immediately freaked out and took Fritz to the vet. Blood tests, x-rays. We were so frightened that whatever happened to Rumi was going to happen to Fritz. And we did not want that to happen. I mean, obviously, losing 1 dog and losing 2 dogs, that would have destroyed us. I would have absolutely wanted to finish the trip, go back home and just stop, because that would have been too much. And thankfully, Fritz was okay. There was nothing wrong with him. But all the love that we were giving to Rumi, now we were giving it double to Fritz.
Yeah. And he's not the most affectionate dog, so
No.
he wasn't too happy.
Like, get out of here! Because you don't know. You have no clue. 1 minute he's there, 1 minute he's gone. It really makes you think and appreciate every single moment that you have with them. Thank you for watching our part 2 of our 2020 RV travel recap. As you can see, the second part had more difficulties and challenges that we had to overcome, but we did. As hard as it was, as difficult as it was, we worked together and had each other and made it through. So our next video will be covering the last part of our travels, which ultimately ending in us stopping traveling. But wait till you hear about it, because the third part is equally as crazy and tragic as the other parts.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed yet, please consider it. And if you want to see more of my face in Dan's channel,
leave it in the comment section down below. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.